Everyone, this is Trevor Bates with PDS Equipment. Today I'm going to be doing a Rasterlink tutorial video, and this is going to be an overview of all of Rasterlink. This is going to be great for if you're hiring new employees that need to get caught up on the software, as well as if you're having any issues and need some help figuring out ways to resolve those issues. Hopefully this can help you guys out. So the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of touch base on our Rasterlink here. We have our icons on the right. All these icons, once you learn these icons, you've pretty much got the software. And I'm going to break those down individually and give you guys a good breakdown of every one of them. First thing is I'm going to bring a file in. It's just like most softwares. We're going to go File, Open, and bring in a file. You're just going to navigate to wherever your file may be and then bring it right in. Let's see if I can find one here. We'll go PDS. It will always bring it in at the bottom. Here's your job list. As you can see, jobs I've been running, and it will bring it in down here at the bottom. So quick overview over here on the left hand side. This is your ink levels. It's going to tell you your percent that's in the machine. If you also want to know your percents on the machine, you can hit the enter button on your machine and it will give you the percents. This area below it is going to be where the images are being ripped and sent over to the printer. So down here below it is going to be where your error codes may pop up, as well as just your information of sending and ripping and all of that type of information. Moving over here to the right, these are our icons. I'm going to break each one of these down and kind of give you a cheat sheet and give you 5 words or less really that break down each tab, and you can write these down, and as you're learning the software, you can, you may be looking for profiles or overprints or how to get into Jig Print. This little cheat sheet will really help you till you learn the software for those keywords. So I'm going to start off at the top over here with the Properties tab. Some keywords on the Properties tab is this is your Home tab. If you ever find yourself somewhere in the software and you need to get back to the Home tab, you can select the Properties tab. This you can also write information. This is just information of the job, and then also put down job cost and ink consumption. So moving on to the next tab is the Arrangement tab. Some key notes I would just put down on it is arrangement of multiple jobs. When you're combining them, we'll touch base more on it, but when you're combining 3, 4, 5 jobs. Below that is the Quality tab. Quality tab is going to be for profiles, pass rates, overprints, resolution, clear gloss. Those 4 or 5 words right there may help you if you're struggling to figure out where that information is. Next tab is going to be crop. Crop's going to be pretty straightforward. We won't spend much time on it, but this is for cropping of jobs. The next is going to be general print. So I would almost put, bed layout, movement on the bed. And we'll touch base on this one a little bit more later on. Below that is Jig Print. Some keywords would be just creating jigs, or templates would be a good word. Okay, moving on. Execution. This tab is probably one of the most used tabs out of all of them. This is how you're going to send jobs to the printer. So sending of jobs, maybe also put print count. If you're doing the same job multiple times, you can create a print count so you're not having to send it 20 times. You can just send it over once. The next one is going to be special plate. So this is going to be for your special colors. you could just write down creating special plates, special colors. Below that is going to be composition. This is going to be arrangement of special colors and special plates. Putting them in the order you want them. So if you're going to print with primer, color, maybe clear on top, you have to arrange those plates in a certain order. Below that is the layer tab. This layer tab is going to be, the biggest thing I use this for is for thinning of the white ink. If you've got white ink kind of hanging out in some of your images, you can choke that white ink down, thin it a few pixels, so that's going to help that white from hanging out. So thinning is the key word here for layer. The next one is color replace. Color replace is pretty straightforward. Replacement of colors. Not a whole lot of people use this, but if you want to do a color change on the fly, you have that ability. The next is going to be duplicate. I don't use this very often because you have the ability to just right click on your job and hit duplicate, or Control D. Below this, the next tab is backup. This is actually used a lot for a lot of my customers when they're printing the same job quite often, or they have a customer come in every 2-3 weeks and they want to clear their job queue over here. They can clear it and bring in files later on that's going to come back into the software exactly the way they cleared it out before. So next is the trash can below, which is the delete. Also, you can right click and just hit delete all data or delete rip data. So that was an overview. I know it's fast. Quick overview though of just all your tabs. You're not going to use all of these all the time. Really, there's going to be predominantly just 2 or 3 you're going to use. Special plate we're going to use a lot. Execution we're going to use a lot, and probably Jig Print or General, whichever you decide to use. I use Jig Print a lot. So first thing we're going to do is really get in more detail about this properties and all these tabs. So I've got this job selected here. Whichever one is highlighted blue is the one you are selected on. That's the job you're going to work on. Notice it's going to change over here in the information tab. So if I'm going to work on this PDS equipment logo here, it's going to tell me what the job format is here, which is a JPEG, your image size, as well as your profile and what it's bringing everything in as, your resolutions. I look at this from time to time, but not often. This is just the information of the job. If you were going to do cost analysis, you would need to rip this job, and it's going to give you the information. I think I've got some up here that may already be ripped. There we are. So notice this ink consumption here. So this was a full bed size, and this total CCs right here is going to be your ink consumption. So if you wanted to figure out your job costs, if you were paying $210 for a bottle of ink, you could say it's 21 cents per cc because there are 1,000 cc's in a bottle. So if you multiplied 21 cents times 8, that's going to give you your total cost per job. Here's a couple jobs here. You can see this job here was very, very low, so that would be less than a penny, of cost. But that's how you're going to figure it out. So just to reiterate, it's 21 cents per cc. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to move over here next to the arrangement tab. This is for multiple jobs. So if I want to arrange multiple jobs together, what I'm going to do is click one. I'm then going to hit shift and click all of them, or I can just hit Control and select the ones I want. So when I do that, it's going to ask me to arrange them or release them. And it's also going to give me scan margin, feed margin. This is basically just the distance it's going to separate them on the bed. So if I click arrange, you will see it ties all 3 of these jobs in. Now this is all going to print together at the same time. So I'm going to jump down here to general print real quick just to show y'all how it's laying these out on the bed. So this is our bed print area. You have the ability now to select each job and move them freely along the print bed wherever you may want them. So that's the arrangement tab. We're going to come back here to our home tab. We're going to go back to just selecting one job for now. And we're going to jump over here to the quality tab. So with the quality tab, this is where all your profiles are going to be, your resolutions, your pass rates, overprints. What this is a lot of my customers will use the same profile for every single type of material. Very rarely do I notice a huge difference when changing the profiles of a color change. There are times if your colors are not matching completely, you can change profiles and it will make a difference. But for the most part, it's very hard to tell. But if you want to change profiles, you would select your media. You know, we have acrylic, polycarbonate, transparent PET. All of these are great to try out. If I select acrylic here, it's then going to have your resolutions for all the acrylics. So 600 by 600 here is what most of my customers run all the time. Very rarely do they go up to a 1200 by 1200. Notice when I change my resolution, my pass rate here is going to change. So if I go to 1200, it's going to be a 16 pass. What this is meaning is it's not going to take it 16 passes and be done with this job. This is going to be your speed. So the higher the pass rate, the slower the print. So 600 by 600 is my slowest, lowest resolution. That's an 8 pass. If I go up to 1200 by 1200, notice it changed to a 16 pass. What that's doing is making it twice the time for our printing speed. Below the pass rate here is overprints. If y'all are wanting to do some textures and raise up your print, you can do up to 9 overprints. So some people are doing some braille and some different things. You may even have to go higher than 9 if you're wanting to go that high, but this is your overprints for your textures. I skipped over this here. If you've got a certain profile you want to use, you can click that specify device profile, and it's going to have all of your profiles in a list if you know what the name of one is you like to run. Once again, most people will run the same one on every single type material. If you wanted to check all of those profiles and see the difference for yourself, you can come down here to check the matching of device profiles and physically select them and change your resolutions. And what this is going to do is you can also hit select all down here, and then you can print this. What that's going to do is give you the information, and it's going to print every single one of these profiles with all the information above it and the file you've got selected. So you're going to physically be able to see the change in color from profile to profile. So next we're going to get out of this and hit close. If y'all wanted to send that, all you would have to do is just click the printer button here, and that's going to send it over. So next we're going to keep on going down this tab here, feed distance correction, scan distance correction. I very rarely use that. UV mode setup. When we're doing clear gloss, you do need to come into here to create clear gloss. I've got another video out that is creating clear gloss on a 6042 Mark II. If y'all want to learn how to do that, it would be beneficial to check that video out. We're going to jump over here next to the crop button. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my home tab and select a different job. I'm going to select this one here and show you guys how I would crop. So this is my zoom in and zoom out. I use this all the time in a lot of these different icons. It just allows me to see a little bit better. So crop is pretty much like any crop you've ever seen before. What you're going to do is just grab it and move it like you've done before, more than likely. And what that's going to do is you can see the numbers change over on the left hand side, but you can zoom in really tight if you want, just to see how tight you're getting to the job. But I use this from time to time if a job doesn't come in exactly how I want it. But if I hit initialize, a lot of people believe that by hitting initialize here is going to save that. Actually, what that's going to do is take it back to the original. Okay, so once you crop, you don't have to do anything. It's automatically cropped for you. And you can see that if I jump over here to general print, you can see how it's cropped it for me in the area that I just cropped out. If I hit initialize and take it back to the original and jump over here to general print, you can see the artboard is different. So that's just a quick overview on the crop. You can enter in numbers if you know a specific number you need to do. You can do that as well. So the next tab is general print. We're going to jump into it real quick and just kind of show y'all. I know I've been jumping into it previously. Let's select a different job here. Let's go to this PDS equipment logo. So in general print, here's our zoom in, zoom out. Once again, I use this a lot. Here's our print area. Here, you can notice this job's pretty small. So if I wanted to make this job bigger, I can by hitting valid and increasing the size. Okay, this is a true vector, so I could blow this up as big as I want to, as long as I keep the ratio. Okay, so if I can also type numbers in 8.326236, I'm sorry, and then make it any size I want it to be. If I unselect this keep ratio, it is going to distort your files and stretch them. So very rarely do I ever uncheck this keep ratio. We can also turn it here on a 90 or even 180, 270. I do this when I'm printing on the kebab for the rotary. I do that a lot, but there are times you may want to turn your files on a 90. You can also reverse them here. This is for second surface printing. You know, if you're printing on acrylic with a white on the back, you're going to need to reverse. So you have that option here. And below that, you can see is deskew. I rarely use this. If you look on my screen as I hit this, it's going to skew your job. Very rarely do I use that. I have used it if I've got a crooked jig or something like that for a fix, but very rarely. Below deskew is your position. This is your physically where it's going to be laid out on the bed. With the Mamaki UV printers, the bottom right hand corner is always going to be your 0, 0. So if I move these buttons here, that's going to physically move it on the bed. I can also click it and move this image anywhere on the bed I want to move it. You can see over on the left hand side, those numbers are physically moving. I like to just enter in the values myself. So if I wanted to move it 3 inches over to the left and 2 inches up, what I would do is 3 inches on my scan and 2 inches on my feed. Okay, this Scan is always going to be your left to right, and feed is always going to be front to back. Learn those two words. You're going to use those quite a bit with this machine. So scan, once again, is left to right. Feed is going to be front and back. So I'm going to reset this over to 0, 0 by entering in 0, 0 and hitting enter. Make sure if you're going to put something in, you have to hit enter to activate it. So we're going to go back to 0. Below this is our copies. If you wanted to do multiple copies of this job, notice this is grayed out below it. Once I hit copies, it's going to activate it. Okay, so I did 8 copies there. This layout here is going to physically spread out this job for me. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so y'all can see. So if I want to do a 1/2 inch in between them, I have that ability by just typing in 1/2 and hit enter. That's going to spread them out a 1/2 inch here on our scan. And on our feed, remember feed is front and backs, and scan is right to left. So if I want to do a 1/2 inch in between them, up and down, that's what I will do, is just type in 1/2 inch. I can then increase copies to see how many I can fit on the bed. It's looking like 8 is all you're going to fit here. Sorry about that. I'm going to keep on moving on. We're going to take this job back down to 1. Below that is your print area. I very rarely use this. It basically changes the area of your print so you can see where it's laying out. Very rarely do I use that. Crop marks, if you're doing print and cut, and you need some mark detections, if you're working with a roll-to-roll machine, these are great. You can activate them, and I recommend using this mark size for crop detection for the UCJV or a CJV, or even if you're taking it over to a plotter. This is going to print crop marks for you. So I'm going to turn these off, but you will need to use those. Also, cut line down here. This is for if you're running, a big CNC. You need to have a cut line. Cameras will recognize it as well as Fotoba cut marks. You also have the ability to add labels. If you wanted to type something in, anything at all, what that's going to do is put it above the logo when you print. Notice USB cannot open port is blinking at me. That's because I'm not plugged into a machine right now. So that's a quick overview of just general print. If I'm just doing one job, say I'm wanting to print on a piece of paper to see how a job looks or lay it out on the bed, I will use general print. Most of you will probably end up using Jig Print 90% of the time when you're doing jobs. You can do all of these features that we've just went over in Jig Print. But if I'm just wanting to do one real fast, quick print, I will use general print from time to time. So next we're going to jump into Jig Print. Okay. So with Jig Print, notice everything is grayed out. If I do not activate up here, you're never going to be able to work in Jig Print. Okay. The first thing you do when you come into Jig Print is activate it. By hitting this checkbox here, notice general print is now grayed out, and all my special colors that I talked about before are grayed out. If you're going to add white or add a primer or add any special colors, you've got to make sure you do that before you come into Jig Print. That'll make a lot more sense when I get to breaking down these special colors. But for now, we'll do a quick overview of the Jig Print, and we'll create a jig. So what I've done now is I've selected it, but notice there's 2 tabs here. Jig layout is simply going to be a lot like general print, what we just talked about. Your job size and how to arrange the different sizes of your job, as well as rotation and mirror and multiple copies. Now, jig definition here is going to be your physical jig. So if you were printing on business cards or maybe coasters or name badges, golf balls, I mean anything, this is a great tool and a great feature of the Rasterlink. My customers love this, and I know you will too. So we're going to do, let's just say we're going to do a 3" by 3" coaster, a tile coaster, anything. What we're going to have to do is create a jig. Notice everything is grayed out. The only way to create a jig is by naming it and adding it to your system. So if this tile coaster maybe had a part number, you could name it that part number, and it's going to save in your system forever. So I'm going to name this 3 by 3 coaster. Okay. I then have to hit this green plus button. This is add a jig template. When I hit this, it's going to activate everything below it and going to allow me to then alter my jig and create it how I want it. So I'm going to hit plus, and now everything is activated, and we can design this jig how we want it. Notice if I hit this drop down arrow, I'll go back so y'all can see. This drop down arrow right here is going to be all my jig templates. Notice I've done a lot of different jig templates. 12 by 12, 15 by 15. These are all jobs that I've done, and y'all's jigs will eventually start looking like this if you're doing a lot of different products and a lot of different jigs. So if I, 6 months down the road wanted to come in and do a 3 by 3 canvas or a 3 by 3 coaster, I can do that. But what we're going to do now is physically go over every single option here. The first thing I like to do when I'm doing a 3 by 3 or just any jig at all, I will scroll down here and I will change my counts to 1. What this does is basically doesn't confuse me, and I don't see all those squares. So now I've only got one little bitty square over here, and I can physically make it the size I want it. So I'm going to scroll back up here to the top. Your jig size, this is your full printable area. 24.016 by 16.535. That is your full printable area. If you're curious, that's a good thing to know, maybe write down. You've got a little bit bigger than a 24 by 16.5, so you can bleed just a little bit. Once again, this is for a UJF 6042 Mark II. If you were doing a 4 by 8, it would be much bigger, or our 7151, which is a 28 by 20. This number is going to change. So I always will leave my jig size the full size of the bed. Okay, and then next below that is your position. All right. So with your position, this is the physical position of the jig. Notice you can see this moving. I always will leave it at 0, 0. Because if you're going to physically cut jigs out, you're going to want to register them to the bottom right hand corner of the bed. Okay. So I moved this off 1 inch by 1 inch. But if you were, say you had a jig for these coasters, you want to register it to this bottom right of the bed every time you go and print it. If you're familiar with lasers, most of the time you register it to the top left. The Mamaki products, we're going to register them to the bottom right. So I'll leave this at 0, 0. Once again, leave your jig size at the size it is. Leave your position of the jig at 0, 0. D-skew we have talked about. I don't use it very often at all. Material size, right here. I've kept on scrolling down. this is where you're going to enter in the physical size of your material. So we're doing a 3" by 3" coaster. This is where I'm going to tell it 3" by 3". So now you notice our box over here has changed to 3" by 3". This is the size of my coaster. I'm going to keep scrolling down. We're going to go past counts because we're going to leave it at 1 for now, and then we're going to expand it a little later on once I get everything laid out right. So first position down here. This is going to be the first position of your first slot, your first coaster. So a lot of people will do a 1/4" by 1/4". They're going to register their jig all the way to 0, 0, but if you're getting these lasered out or cut out, you're going to have to leave some margin here for your first slot on the bottom. So we'll set this first one to a 1/4". You can make this anything you want, but I like to do, 1/4". So if I zoom in, that area here is going to be a 1/4, and this area here is going to be a 1/4. I now can zoom out. Notice zoom right here in the middle. And I can now start changing my counts. So I'm just going to hit 2 right here. Well, my button sticked, I'm sorry. So in order to lay this out, we're going to have to tell it, kind of like we did with arrangement earlier, we're going to have to tell it our spacing and our layout. So this is tricky for people to get, but if you look right here, interval and pitch, okay, we've got this set to 3.858. So if I want to have spacing in between each of these, this is where the spacing is going to be. So we've got a 3" by 3" material. If I want a 1/2" space between them, I will have to add a 1/2" to my material size. So if I want to do that, I would have to put in here 3.5. And then also for our height, we would have to add a 1/2", 3.5. If we wanted to do a 1/4" in between them, we would have to add 3.25. Okay, notice they're getting tighter. If I wanted 1", I would do 4. And that's going to give me 1" in between them. Most people are going to want this number to be as tight as possible so they can fit more products on the bed. So we will just do 3.25 in our spacing. So now we know we have a 1/4" space from our first position down here from the right and the left. And also we're going to have a 1/4" gutters, or the in-between spacing between each slot. So now I can start adding more on my counts, and you can see it's going to lay them out perfectly for me with 1/4" spacing all over the bed. So now we've basically created a jig for 28 tile coasters to lay on this bed. And we can print this outline. By coming here, we can go to print the jig outline and just hit print. What that's going to do is it's going to send the job over to the printer. And if you've got paper on the bed, we can physically print all of these outlines. So then if you don't have a jig, you could just set these coasters right in those squares. And you could fill up a page with lots of different jig templates. So you may have 4 or 5 different products on one piece of paper laid out, because we can change the colors of the jig outline. So the coasters may be black, and you may do, pop sockets that might be green, or name badges you might do blue, and just move them all around throughout the bed. So really you're creating jigs on just pieces of paper. You can also save this here, and it will save it as a PDF and ask you where to save it, so you could then send this over to a laser or anything to cut you a jig out. And all of these spacings and stuff we've created is going to show up in that PDF file. So I'm going to keep on moving on. Another thing I didn't mention was this layout button here. So we've created our jig. If we come here to this middle button, what that's going to do is lay out this logo directly in the center of each slot. If I was on the bottom right, it would lay it out on the bottom right. And this is just the positioning this logo within the slot. So if I go over here to Jig Layout, this is going to physically show me how it's centering it dead on in each slot. So notice I'm changing the size of this image to fit perfectly. So we'll do 2.75. And that's going to be centered every single time. Now, I zoom out a little bit so y'all can see, I can just start increasing my copies to even 28, and boom, it's going to lay them out dead middle every single time, and it's going to be consistent. So we're going to come back down to, let's go over here to Jig Definition. I'm going to show you if I did it bottom right, come back here to Jig Layout to see it, it's going to register it to the bottom right. So the big thing is to know the difference between these two tabs. The layout is kind of your viewer and how you can change the file. The Jig Definition is physically the defining of the jig, the slots and everything. If you didn't want to print, maybe 13 for whatever reason, that slot, you didn't have something in it, you can select 13 and then hit skip down here, and it is not going to print right there in that 13 slot. Okay, say you wanted to only print the first 2 rows, all you would have to do is decrease your counts down to 2. So that's going to print your 14. So hopefully that's clear for y'all to understand. You can also move individual slots. For whatever reason, if 9 was off, you can move slot number 9 to be wherever you want it to be. Maybe in the cutting of the jig it got off 1/8 of an inch, you might have to move it. Very rarely do I have to do that, but it is a nice feature. So I'm going to keep on moving on. Zoom out so y'all can see. Hopefully this makes sense to you all. I'm going to exit out of Jig Print here, and we're going to go over how to do multiple jobs in Jig Print. And then next we'll move on to special colors after that. So before I do that, I'm going to bring this count down to 1, and then come back over here to the Info Properties tab to go to the Home. Oh, let me deselect Jig Print. Notice everything's grayed out. I need to unselect the Jig Print box and then go back to the home page. So if I'm going to do multiple jobs in Jig Print, just like we did up here before in arrangement, these are already arranged, we'll just use these. So I'll go over it again just so you know. If you wanted to arrange multiple jobs, you can select one and then select multiple by hitting Control or Shift, and then we can arrange them here, and that's going to tie all of them in just like that. Okay, so we'll do these logos here, and we're going to go into Jig Print, and I'm going to show you how to physically lay them out in Jig Print for those 3x3 coasters we were just talking about. Notice these are coming in all over the board. So the first thing we're going to do, just like we talked about, is come up here to Jig Print and hit this checkbox. The next thing we will do is define the jig we want it to be. So we're either going to rename it and create a jig, or we're going to scroll and we're going to find our 3x3 coaster we created. Alright, so notice it's trying to put all of those in slots. but our logos are a little big. Hopefully you bring in the logos 3 by 3 inches perfectly, and then you won't have to do some changes. But if you got to do changes, you can select the job on the left and physically change it to maybe 3 inches. So those all look pretty good there. I'm going to zoom out a touch. So by selecting anything on the left hand side, that's going to just highlight that job. So if I wanted to do maybe 14 of this green B, if I hit 14 in copies, it's going to lay out 14. If I wanted to do, 5 of this BU here, I can do that. And then the Auburn, we can fill up the rest and do 7. Okay, we'll keep on filling them up. So, sorry, I got stuck there. So now I've done 9, 5, and 14. So this is a great feature, even if you've only got to do 3 or 5. I use this a lot. Hopefully you will too. We're going to scroll back out. We're going to go back to our Properties tab, our Home tab, and keep on moving on. So notice everything's grayed out. We're going to just select one single job now. So if I wanted to send this job over to the printer, what I'm going to do is go execution. Say we've got everything laid out exactly like we want it. This jig, for instance, it's laid out. That's how we want to print. What we're going to do is select this printer right here, and then we are going to hit rip and print, and then hit start. That is going to send it to the printer. Once it sends, you will see it ripping over here, and data remain will pop up on your printer. In order to print it, all you've got to do is hit remote. That will sending it into remote mode will tell it to read what the computer has sent over. So every single time you want to send a job, you will come to this icon, you will have rip and print selected, and you will just click start. Okay, so we will go back down. Let's select one job, and I'm going to show you all how to do multiple plates. So we're going to select this PDS equipment logo, and we're going to do just a white plate underneath this. So if you're printing to, a black object or any object that has color, this ink is 100% transparent. So you're going to have to put a white base down. So in order to do that, we're going to come to our special plate tab. Okay. If we select on that, you're going to see special color pop up. It's going to have your ink and your percentages. So in order to do a white one, we're going to select here. And we've got clear, primer, and white in this machine that I'm running. All I want to do is create a white plate. So I'm going to select white. Now we have 100% and 100%. This is the density of the white. Okay. So if I'm printing to a black powder coated cup, I really need to put a lot of white down to achieve, the red in this logo, to achieve the colors I want. If I'm not wanting a whole lot of white density, you have the ability to change this density. I always recommend people to change it evenly. Don't run 100% on one and then 0 on the other. If you wanted to do that, I would just run 50-50. But more times than not, I will run a lot higher ink density than 50-50, because that is just not enough white to really achieve the colors I'm looking for. But it just also depends on the color of your product. So I will run 100% white, probably 90% of the time. Next, below this 100% our densities is whole image and valid pixel. So this is very important when creating white, or any plate for that matter. you've got to know where you want to put the white in the file. So whole image is going to put the white all the way around the artboard, the complete square, the whole image itself. Valid pixel is going to only put it underneath the S and the D and the P for PDS, and underneath the equipment. Anywhere there's pixels in this job is where it's going to put it. So if you're doing logos, valid pixel is what you're going to want to use. If you were doing, you know, a JPEG, maybe an image, whole image is what you would choose. This is whole image here. I've created this before, and that's going to put it all underneath that picture of that eye. But for this logo, we're going to just do valid pixel, and you will see when it creates it, that'll make more sense to you. You'll be able to see the white in PDS equipment. So we're going to check composite automatically. What this is going to do is physically composite it and bracket it like you see up above. When I'm doing one special plate, I will composite automatically. If I'm doing multiple special plates, we do not need to composite automatically. We need to create all of our plates and then composite them. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a minute. So for now, let's just do composite automatically. And this top and bottom is asking me, where do you want the white? If I'm printing, you know, first surface, I'm going to want to put the white underneath the color, so I would want it on the bottom. If you're going to do second surface on glass or acrylic, you're going to want to reverse the image, and you would put the white on top. Okay? So by hitting create, what that's going to do is create my white plate. And you can see it's going to tie in a white plate. So it is only going to put it under PDS equipment, not under the whole image. So, but notice if I wanted to do primer and white and color and maybe clear on top, notice the special plate tab is grayed out. That's because I cannot add another plate once I am composited. That's what we just talked about. And I'm going to show you all how to composite multiple plates now. So what we're going to do is take this logo below it. We're going to come back to special plate. And we're going to do a primer, which is an adhesion promoter, a white, and then a color. So first thing I'll do is I'm going to create my primer. Here's my percents with primer. Just a quick note you might want to know. Sometimes 100% primer is not always the best adhesion. Sometimes if you will lower the primer percent, you can actually get better adhesion. And we test every product that before we would want to send it out by doing tape pulls and crosshatch tests. So you can print it, take you some 3M painter's tape and try to rip the ink off. That's going to give you a good idea of how well that product is how well the ink is sticking to the product. So for now, we will do a 75% primer. This is great. 75% is really good when printing the stainless tumblers. I'm going to now determine whole image or valid pixel. We're going to do valid pixel on this image here, just like we did earlier. And remember, this composite automatically, I do not want to check this, because if I check it, it will composite it. I'm going to just hit create and create this primer plate. Okay, so you notice it created my primer plate. Now I'm going to come back to special plate because it's no longer grayed out. I'm going to add my white. I'm going to create it. So we're going to do 100%, 100%, valid pixel, composite. Automatically is not going to be checked. We're just going to hit create. So notice it's going to now create my white. So now that I've got those two created, I'm going to hit shift and select all of them. And now we're going to move on to this composition tab. This is the tab underneath special plate. And I'm going to arrange these in the order I want them. So by going into composition, I'm going to physically move them in the correct order. Let me space this out so you all can see this a little better. When printing with the Mamaki products, everything is always read from the bottom up. So at this point, it's showing me it's going to print white, primer, color. That is not what we want. We want primer, white, color. So before I composite it, if I select it and drag it, it's going to move it anywhere I want to put this. So I'm going to put this on the bottom so it's primer, white, color. I can now composite this and tie this in together and bracket it. So this will print. The print condition is different from the selected job. Just hit yes. And you will notice it's going to tie all of these in together and have it in the correct order. I'm now able to print this and it's ready to go for a job. So just going in general print again, just so y'all can see, this is a little image. So hopefully that makes sense. The next tab underneath this composition is the layer tab. And going back to this composition here and creating special plates, I've got lots of other videos showing you all how to do that. That's much shorter videos that really breaks it down. And you could just type in Rasterlink tutorial, creating multiple special colors or creating special plates. I've also got one on thinning, which I'm going to talk about next. There's a lot of different videos, and they'll help you just, if you've got one certain problem you're trying to figure out really fast, those videos will help. So I'm going to come back up here. We're going to select this job that I just created white on. Okay. And if the white was ever hanging out outside, you know, the P or the D and the S, you'll notice it'll hang out on the high side or the low side of everything, or the left, or the left over here, or the right over here. If you wanted to thin that down, it's very easy to do. To draw that white in, you're going to come over here to the layer tab and select it, and it can be slow to open, so we'll give it a minute. Okay. Now, on the left-hand side, and this is a must to remember, I get a ton of calls on this. If you want to thin it, you've got to come over here to the left and select the white. That's going to change this screen. If you do not select the white, you will never be able to thin it. So I'm going to go back to the color. It's going to be a different screen pop up. Okay. Notice this is a different screen. This is not where we're going to thin it. I'm going to select the white. And then we have special color size correction over here. If I select this box, just like in general print and jig print, we have to select these check boxes to activate it. I have thickening and I have thinning. Thickening is actually going to make the white bigger. Thinning is going to draw it in. So we're going to select thinning. And then we have scan and we have feed. Remember, scan is right to left. Feed is front to back. So if I'm going to thin it, I will always usually go around 2 and 2 or 3 and 3. However much you think you may need to thin, however much it's hanging out is how I would determine that. But this is thinning at 5/1000ths of an inch. So 3 pixels is not very much, but usually this is enough to cover that white hanging out. If it's only hanging out on the left or on the right, I will also thin it on the feed. Always will change these so it thins it proportionately underneath. But that's it. That should help you guys out if you're seeing a little bit of white hang out. I'm going to keep on moving over here to the next tab, which is going to be color replace. Okay, let me go. I'm going to select a different file so I can show you guys some more features. This is not a true EPS. It has to be a true EPS in order to really make changes in a file. So this is a logo here. I'm going to come down here to this tab, color replace, and select it. So now that it's selected, notice I have spot color, CMYK, gradation. So if I come here and select this color, this is giving me the values of this logo, which is going to be 094, 043. If I wanted to change this to any color in the gamut, what I can do is select it, come down here to replace, and say we want to change it to, 70% yellow and 60% cyan to maybe make a green. We're going to hit apply. What that's going to do is change it to green. It will not change here on your screen, but notice my input was 94 and 43. My new output is going to be 60 and 70 on my cyan and yellow. It will print this color green if you were to print this. So most of the time you're going to be changing colors in Corel or Illustrator or whatever design application you like to use. But if you needed to change the color on the fly, this is great to do. And we're going to break down a little bit more colors here in just a second of how to color match. I'm just going to keep on moving through these tabs though. The next one's going to be, well, I'm going to show you how to take it back first before I move on. If you changed it to green and you wanted to take it back to the original, all you've got to do is come back in here and just hit replace, scroll down, and hit apply. And notice it will cancel that out. Your output is not changed at all. It's going to take this back to the original. So I'm going to move on down to the duplicate. We talked about this earlier. Remember, we'll scroll back to our home tab. So if I want to duplicate this file, I can come here to duplication, or I can right click and just hit duplicate. What that's going to do is it's going to duplicate it, but it will send it down to the bottom. Remember, anytime you bring a file in from file open or duplicate, it will send to the bottom of the job list. I'm going to skip over restore and backup and just come down here to delete real quick. If I wanted to delete this job, I can come here to the trash can and select the job and hit delete, or I can right click and delete as well. So we're just going to hit the delete here just to show you. It's going to say delete one job data complete, and you can say yes. So now that job is gone from my queue. We'll do that here. We'll clean up a couple more jobs, delete all data. We'll select it. Make sure you select it first, and then delete all data. Okay, delete. Okay, so we will keep on moving. That looks like it was something to do with composited jobs. I think I will need to, if I'm going to delete this, what I will have to do is select both of them and then delete. You cannot delete one at a time. There it goes. You got to make sure that everything is selected. If not, you've got to decomposite it. That's what that error was. Only a part of the composited job is deletable. So I skipped over restore and backup. This is going to be great for if you run the same jobs quite often. This is great for creating folders of your customers. You know, say you did prints for McDonald's, and you can create a McDonald's folder of all the different jobs you've done for them, and come back, you know, a year later and print those 3x3 coasters or whatever it may have been you printed for them. So what I can do is I can select the job and then come over here to the backup tab, and we then have backup and we have restore. So if I want to clear this job out out of my job list here, I can hit delete job after backup. Later on in life, we can come back and bring that file in. So if I hit backup, it's going to ask me, where do you want to save this? So you may have that McDonald's folder or whatever. We'll save it to Mamaki images here, and we're going to call this test McDonald. Okay. So, you know, the job comes back up. You need to run it again. Once that saves it, it's going to delete it from here. It's backing it up now. You can see. Once that's done, it'll delete it out of your queue. Okay. So there it went, deleted the data completely, as you can see down below. So 6 months, a year, and the next day even. You know, even if you want to keep this job list clean and bring them in every day already restored, all I got to do is go restore, navigate to my McDonald's folder, whatever it may be, and I believe we named it, Test McDonald, saved it as an RLAJ6. I can click open, and that's going to bring it in. Set up, tied in with the primer, the white, the color, everything, and it's going to drop it to the bottom once it brings that in. So it's extracting everything now. Here's all our loading, and here we are. So there's our file we've just restored and backed up. Hopefully this helps. A lot of my customers really like this feature. You know, this is I know it's been a long video, but hopefully this helps y'all just for training purposes, if it's a new employee or whatever. I'm also going to touch base on color matching. This is great if you're trying to hit a certain color. So if I'm going to say I'm trying to match a Coca-Cola red or a John Deere green, or you've got that customer that's a picky customer that they've got to have, you know, their colors match. This is a great way to figure out how to do that and how your printer is printing. So we're going to come up here to the tool up in the top left hand corner, and we're going to select CMYK color chart. Okay. So notice it's going to actually open up a different tab, which you will see. Here's another drop down, just like in Jig Print with our green plus button. If we want to create a color, we have to rename it and then add it to the system. So I'm going to rename this John Deere green test. Okay, so if I go over here now to the add, that's going to add it to our system. We'll click yes. You can see other colors I've been working on, but it will save it. So if you had a John Deere green, hopefully you've got the CMYK values of a Pantone. If you got a Pantone number, get the CMYK values that's close. So we're going to start off and try to find a decent John Deere green. Let's do we'll do something similar to what we did before. Maybe increase yellow just a little bit. Increase our cyan. So Now, our center box here is going to be our 65 and our 82. All right. Let me change this here. So 65 and 82 is our center. If we zoom in, oh, zoomed in too much. I'm going to show you guys that. So let me zoom in to this center one just to show you the values, 65 and 82. So this width direction and height direction over here, this is how I'm physically going to expand this chart. And I'm always, make sure you're selected on display based on printable area. This is going to be the full size of the bed. So you may want to put paper down, or even maybe put your product down. And you can add white underneath this when we're done to really achieve these colors. But so if I come over here to width direction, what this is going to do is you can select any of your CMYKs and you can expand this chart left and right. Height direction is going to expand it up and down. So this percent is how dramatic of a change we're going to make as we increase it. And the patches I will start selecting. And this is going to physically expand the chart. Okay. So you can see it's starting to get a little bit of a change. If I hit 2%, it's going to really make a difference. So remember, this is our center, 65 and 82. What this is doing is stepping 2% change, decreasing it, and 2% change, increasing it to the left. So this would be 67 cyan, and this is going to be 69 and 71. And this one over to the right is going to be 63 and 61. So that's expanding it there. I can also, we're going to do a 1%. Oh, sorry about that. Button step. We don't need negative. So I'm going to move down here to height direction yellow, and let's expand based on yellow. As I increase my patches, that's going to increase my chart. If I can now change the percent, you'll notice that it's getting darker. These black squares, when I go to 3%, what that's meaning is I've ran physically out of yellow to change. I have no more yellow. I've maxed out at 100. So I'm going to go back down to 2. So if this was, your John Deere green, we have the ability to print this, and it's going to give me the values for each block: 5182, 5282, 5382 here. It's a great feature of Rasterlink. So then what I can do is go File and print this. We can also change our patch sizes here. But say we print this and it doesn't exactly hit. Any of these colors are not exactly hitting the color you're looking for, but maybe you're getting closer. Maybe you're close, but you're still not there. What you can do is, say this top left-hand corner was your closest color. You can take that value there once you print it, or you can even zoom in and take that value and put it here, which is going to redo another chart based on a closer color. Usually within 2 to 3 prints, I have the ability to hit that Coca-Cola red or John Deere green that you're trying to hit. Okay. So hopefully this helps y'all with trying to match these colors. And if you got any questions on that, feel free to give me a call on this, and I can help you guys out more. So in order to send this to the job, to the printer, we're just going to go File, Create Job. It's going to say, where do you want to send it? I've got multiple machines here, but it's going to send this over to my other tab. Remember, we had 2 tabs. You can see it coming in. Okay. And it's going to drop it down. We now have our John Deere green test, and we can, hit rip and print, and it will print our CMYK values. All we would want to do is just go to the execution, rip and print, and then click start. Okay. So that's I know that was a quick overview, but hopefully this allows you to have a better understanding of Rasterlink and how to navigate through it. Once again, once you learn these tabs, you've got the Rasterlink. It's a very user-friendly, easy software to learn, and it works great with these Mamaki products. Get in here and play around with it. If you have any questions at all, feel free to give me a call. You know, once again, this is Trevor Bates with PDS Equipment, and we are your Mamaki UV experts. If you got any flatbed needs at all, or need supplies at all, or just technical support or Rasterlink support, anything, feel free to give us a call. We're more than happy to help, and we appreciate your business and you taking the time to sit and watch this video and learn and grow as a company. So feel free, give us a call, and thank you for taking the time to watch this.